Welcome to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling. You are about to discover impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you, so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Be sure you visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now tune in, get ready, and enjoy the journey of emerging as a leader of exception in the 21st century.
Welcome, everyone, to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast. I'm your host, Vicki Noethling, coming to you from Roswell, Georgia. The goal of this podcast is to bring topics and guests that will empower you to become that confident leader and take your business and your life to the next level. Today, I'm really excited to introduce to you Sharon Soliday. And let me tell you a brief bit about her. So Sharon is a serial entrepreneur, now pseudo-retired, and a fierce advocate for kids understanding personal finance. Her unique approach is based on pairing financial education with child development. She aims to inspire young people in the next generation by connecting with them and offering to answer questions about business at no charge. Today, we're going to talk about the number one reason poor kids grow up to financially thrive. And when I read this, it was like, wow, uh, when I was young, we didn't have anything like this. And we only knew what we knew. And so if our parents weren't great at finances, guess what happened to us? And then things, when my kids were growing up, junior achievement came along, and that was the first really focus. And now I work with teachers in the public schools that do this type of education. I think it's so wonderful. So I'm anxious for you to share all that you do. So please join me in welcoming Sharon Soliday as my guest. Sharon.
Well, thank you so much. What a lovely introduction. I appreciate that. I speak to lots of different groups and do different interviews, and I really was excited to do this particular interview because folks don't tend to ask me about the kid perspective and why that matters. I was a kiddo who grew up in a low-income environment. My dad did work for the railroad, but so I think we had some stability that some kids don't. But for the most part, I was the oldest of five, and we struggled at times. I was responsible for if I wanted PE clothes or a yearbook or any sort of spending money. I was on my own for that. The family joke was that our code, I was raised back in the 70s and 80s when they told you all the time, somebody may try to lure you away with a request to your dad or mom is sick, so come with me. And so our family code to see if it was real was SYM, and that was save your money, because that's all our dad ever said, save your money, save your money. And so we thought that seemed appropriate. But what I didn't appreciate at the time is that I was learning to hustle just by the fact I saw how my family stretched money, and I didn't always agree or appreciate it, but I really also learned that this is it. This is bottom for me. I want to live my life as a grown-up as, better than this. And when you're at that per se bottom, you have nowhere to go but up, and your perspective changes. You're willing to take risks. I work with lots of kids and lots of young adults, and I'm fascinated that the kids who tend to have come from a disadvantaged background tend to be the ones who take my advice and just run. And not that my advice is always right, but I'll make suggestions and they just say absolutely, and they gobble it up, versus kids from a more affluent or very comfortable middle class environment, they tell me they're very concerned about security. And I marvel hearing a 19-year-old talk to me about security. I'm like, what are you talking about? You have no kids, no marriage, you have no mortgage,
Yeah.
like you're free. And they worry a lot. And I think it's because they have grown up
Mm.
with a certain amount of comfort, and they know that could be lost, that they need to like go get a high paying job that will ensure that they can do the same thing their
Yeah.
parents did. And there's no security in that plan. You
Yeah.
have to carve your own path and understand your own skill sets and know how to do the things I talk about with kids. So I just find that interesting. So I'm always more excited to work with kids who tell me, look, I don't have much. And I'm like, perfect.
Yeah. We'll get into that conversation a little bit more, but I wanted to first ask two simple questions. The first one is to just let everybody know where you call home. Where do you live?
Absolutely. I'm in Portland, Oregon, the Pacific
Oh,
Northwest,
yes. Love
and
it.
I was raised in California in the Central Valley in Fresno, and it was just
Mm-hmm.
too hot. And so when I eventually was making it to grad school, I came to where the weather is cooler.
Yeah.
So we're kind of kitty corner from each other.
Yeah, we are. We are. Spent time in Portland with my when I worked for UPS. And it was funny. Portland reminded me a lot of where I grew up in Pittsburgh, the weather-wise, sort of gray sometimes, a little bit of rain now
Yeah.
and
Oh yeah, we get a lot of rain, but
then.
it's also very green here. So it's a trade-off,
Yeah, it is. Beautiful mountains and things. So the second question is, you kind of started to go into your story about what led you to do what you did. So as you became an adult and you're in graduating from college, what was that moment though in your career that said, I want to change and I want to pivot to be able to really educate other people's kids and young adults on this so that they don't have to maybe go through the discovery time that you had?
Right. Thank you for the question. My personal journey, I knew education was going to be my ticket out. That if I was definitely starting little businesses through high school and in college, but I knew I had to have that college degree and I wanted a profession. And I became a speech language pathologist. And
Mm.
I was always working with kids in different kinds of families as a part of that profession. And ironically, well, not ironically, I had a baby. I mean, so many pivot points for women are
Yeah.
related to their children.
Hmm.
And I was married at the time, and we each worked less than full time to keep her out of full time care before she was school age. But then school age came, and I realized, how am I supposed to sit at a desk at 8 o'clock if my kid isn't in school till 8:45? Like, do I leave her on a corner? So that's when I said, I know I can make a go of this and do my own business professionally. And as a part of that, I was always mentoring different kids along the way. I do a lot of volunteer work, I sit on
Hmm.
various boards. And then when I sold my company, much of my speech pathologist profession related to child development. And I just saw real gaps between what was out there in terms of advice and information kids needed. So that is when I said, okay, I sold my company 2 years ago, and I describe it to people as I'm now living in this happily ever after phase of life, which is a dream. But what do I want to do that's continuing to be meaningful? And
Yeah.
that's when I said, okay, my passion project is going to be actually putting into words. And a lot of families will say, yeah, I know they need to know that, but how do I describe a credit report to a 9-year-old, which is where I actually have it come up in my sequence of 1 to 18.
Hmm.
And I think, and families are hesitant to talk about it. So I thought, I'm going to write this book and then just share the information, and
See
then
where it
people are
goes.
welcome to contact me. Right now, my other passion project is, the reason I have a website at all is I want to encourage young people and young adults to reach out if they have questions. Can I give a quick example of that?
Sure,
I
absolutely.
Okay, I had a young man who reach out to me and say, and he was very fortunate. He came from a disadvantaged background. He ended up getting a full ride to a private university, and he
Nice.
finished with a degree in business. And he contacted me and he said, "So all my professors and other adults are saying, you're right there. Go ahead and get your MBA. Get your MBA." And
Mm.
he's like, "I don't want to get an MBA." And I said, "Well, what do
Yeah.
you want to do?" And he says, "I really want to be a professional photographer for sports. I want to be on the floor of the NBA, and there's no career path for that. So I don't know how to do it." But in his passion, he had been doing photography for quite a while and getting pretty good. And so I gave him some suggestions. I said, "Well, obviously there's probably people you follow that do that now." And I
Hmm.
said, "First of all, don't get your MBA. You can always go back and get an MBA. The
Yeah.
world
Yeah.
is coached to help 40-year-olds get an MBA." And I said, "So you don't have to do that now. What you want to do is start reaching out to people who are doing what you're doing and admire their work. Be a very authentic about when you like something, what you liked about it. Ask them questions, what their journey was like,
Hmm.
and you will not be surprised, or you might be surprised to realize how many want to help and help
Yeah.
younger kids who don't know, especially if you don't come from a background that offers a lot of exposure or experience." And so he's done that, and he's not on the NBA floor yet, but he's making a living doing some very unique things in sports and minor leagues.
Mm.
And
Nice.
he's been invited to great opportunities. The
Nice.
Mavericks media team met with him, and just as to answer questions. And he's so excited, and you could just see
Yeah.
it. And
Hmm.
so that I'm like, you don't always have to listen to the adults in your life,
Yeah.
which may
Yeah.
not be popular advice.
Well, I think that it's a different mindset now, especially because there are so many entrepreneurs out there that when we went, well, I mean, I grew up in the 60s and 70s. So whenever we grew up, there really wasn't a lot. You didn't think of it as an entrepreneur. You thought, well, this person works for himself, and my grandfather, who I never even thought of as an entrepreneur, but my grandfather sold bread and baked goods door to door. Like, who
Wow.
does that? But, you know, I just thought, well, he didn't want to get a real job or something,
Yeah.
And and so my career path was one that, well, I'm just going to try to find a job, and we put aside, what do we really want to do? What do we really love? What is exciting to us? And oftentimes those that are most trusted steer us, be a lawyer, be a doctor or a nurse or something that's stable and you secure. And
Yeah.
yet, so then you next 30, 40 years, you're unhappy.
Oh, yeah.
And and so when I work with the youth, I try to help them uncover what it is they truly feel that they want to do, and then work to get good at it so that you can make a living at that.
Absolutely. I tell young people now the world is such a different place. First of all, the advantage you have is that you do have the internet, and that it
Mhm.
has flattened the world, that you really can reach out to anybody out there. And
Yeah.
it is a game changer as far as showing kids what's available and who is doing what. The other piece of that is I feel that jobs are changing so radically, so
Hmm.
fast, that my business friends and experts that know far more than me say jobs that exist today will not be the same jobs in 10 years.
No.
And so you can't go in with a mindset of like, well, I'm going to do X, because X may not be
Mm.
there when you decide you're ready for that. It's far more important to learn. I'm good at problem solving. I'm good at
Mm.
networking. I know how to tease apart a situation and put different pieces into place to make something work. I'm really good at making others with different strengths feel heard at the
Mhm.
table. And those kinds of assets, that is what is marketable. far more. And it's great when you have some education and knowledge to actually back up your experience. But for the most part, I'm telling young people now, like my daughter got a degree and then a graduate degree in her undergrad was biology and theater. And I thought, great, she's going to be a scientist in a lab somewhere. That sounds safe. She was always doing something on my kitchen counter. So there we go. But no, she did graduate work in science communication. And the pandemic taught us that lay people don't have a whole lot of knowledge about how
Mhm.
science works. And the interest in her field has grown just in being that translator between the science that's happening in labs and corporates and corporations, and really, mom and dad, regular people
Yeah.
down here that, have to digest that and understand it.
Hmm.
And so I thought, now, if you had told me 20 years ago science communication was like a job, I never would have believed it.
Yeah.
But,
Hmm.
the world is changing rapidly. So
Hmm.
young people really are better to decide, what do I like to do? Because I know the money can look alluring, especially if you think, oh, a lawyer, I'm going to make 100 grand or 200 grand. Well, if you hate what you do, you
Yeah.
will be miserable.
Yeah. And it's so true. When I was going to, I went to business school because I knew I couldn't afford to go to college. And so I thought, well, I'm just going to go and I'll be a secretary. And that really, as a female, and that's why I try to work so much with women. But as a female, our job opportunities were really limited. And what I loved was that, about 4 years into it, this thing called computers was invented. And I thought, well, I suck at typing. I'm really good at shorthand, but I don't know how long this shorthand gig's going to go, which was evidently a true story.
Yeah.
But the thing was that the computers just catapulted me to be able to do all that I wanted to do without that degree. And I see that now in the world we have with the technology, with AI, that's going to be creating jobs that we never knew before and opportunities. And I love that the kids are not afraid of technology,
Oh,
you know, that the opportunities for them to find financial freedom is so, so wide.
yeah. Oh, and I remember when computers, this is what young people don't appreciate. When they first came out, you were afraid to touch the buttons because they would say, you're going to mess up the programming. So don't touch anything unless we tell you. Now you can type this line. And, it made me a little phobic, for
Hmm.
decades and I see kids now just, but with their thumbs and all over the place. And I'm so excited for them because it's a different reality. And
Hmm.
it really has leveled the playing field as to where they can access information and, find their own place. Because
Yeah.
every job that exists now, because of AI, is not going to be the same.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
traditional paths. I mean, I'm not going to name the corporation, but I have a friend who's a bigwig in HR, and he was explaining we used to have 13 paralegals and then 3 in-house counsel. And he said, we now have 3 in-house counsel, and we have gotten rid of all of our paralegals because really their primary role was to write briefs, and AI can spit that out.
Oh,
And if you have the
minutes.
attorney there to actually go over it and verify and make sure it's real case law and that sort of thing, you don't need them. And that to me was a terrifying thought. I thought, wow, what does that mean? But the world is changing. It's changing
Mhm.
quick.
Yeah. And, you know, yes, maybe some of those jobs will be going away, but then new, more exciting jobs that actually give you more freedom to have. And there is no such thing as a balance of work and life, but it gives you more freedom to be able to have the time to spend with your family and still be creative in your job and enjoy
Absolutely.
your job.
Absolutely. And like I said, I really feel that if I was a paralegal in that situation and I had been released because they no longer have that job title, I would really go back and think, okay, well, what am I good at? I'm good at researching, I'm good at analytics, I'm good at organizing information. I mean, when you put that into a cover letter, that is a valuable set of skills and
Absolutely.
resources. So you can't keep yourself in the paralegal box. You might end up doing something radically different, and learning something new again. But frankly, that's good for your brain. So
Mhm.
if you have to do
Exactly.
that every 15 years or so, that'll be okay.
Yeah, I believe you should never stop learning. Everything is a lesson. And so one of the things that I have been fortunate to be part of is in one of the public schools in Georgia here, there's a teacher extraordinaire, which I always am saying, hey, I need to work with you after you retire. But he brought in, he had one of the classes to teach the kids computers and things. And he took that little idea to a whole new stratosphere. He teaches financial understanding, literacy, but he brings in about 40 of us entrepreneurs or business owners 3 times, 4 times a year, and we do Shark Tanks. And
Oh,
he has the kids think of a business they want. They have their parents sometimes help them fund the simple, expense of it, but they also have the school bucks or whatever school things. But he teaches them every aspect of being a small business or an entrepreneur at the seventh and eighth grade level. And the difference in the confidence and their ability to think beyond um, what their circumstances are is just so enlightening, so wonderful. And the other teacher that I work with is actually a high school junior senior teacher, teaches the same thing, takes his kids once a year to New York to go to the financial district to see how New York runs and things. Those exposures, if all of
oh,
our schools could do that, and maybe it takes people like you and I that go into the schools and say, hey, just as I do public speaking in the schools, just to say, hey, we want to do a Shark Tank. We want to do this entrepreneur class for 8 weeks or 10 weeks. Just think what kind of kids would come out of those
oh,
schools.
it would be absolutely amazing. And thank you, first of all, for the work you're doing in the public schools. I'm a big believer in public schools, and I regret that more schools do not embrace that creativity and encourage teachers to really stretch, because it's those remarkable programs. Another program similar to what you do is I'm affiliated with is Letters to a Pre-Scientist, and they
Mm.
work with that middle school age
Oh,
LPS.
wonderful.
And what they do is they I think have about 3,000 kids, 3,200 kids they reach out to in low income communities across the country, and they pair them one to one with a scientist from around the world
Uh,
who is their pen pal for 4 times during the year. And each letter is very structured as far as like my journey, what I do. And when it's like a party on the days, letter opening days, when every kid is hearing from a different scientist and they all share their notes, and scientists send swag. And it because when they start the program, they have kids draw a picture of a scientist, and everybody draws the same thing: old white guy in a lab coat holding a beaker. Like that's what you think in the seventh grade is scientist. And by the end of it, they really recognize there are people in the field, there are people in scientists in corporate America. There's scientists doing all sorts of amazing work in environmental and biological and medical. And it just opens their mind. And the goal of that program is to show kids that STEM, it looks like lots of different things, and there's a place for them in STEM, and it's a fast path to a high income opportunity if they chose to pursue that or had that interest. And I just love that, because it really brings into the classroom those real life experiences like you're
Yeah,
talking. So the more we can do with that and provide those opportunities in a public school setting, absolutely, that's what's going to
yeah,
make the difference.
yeah. One of the other things, and I love the kids can go sometimes on field trips to different places because, again, if you're going back to thinking, well, how can I be financially sound as I'm growing up? You need exposures to other things. And when my daughter was a freshman in high school, um, she is very talented in art and math. And so she decided she wanted to pursue the film and fashion aspect of it. So we in Georgia here are blessed with SCAD, which is in Savannah as well as in Atlanta. And we visited this Savannah campus. I swear to God, you would have thought I was the kid going to school because this opened your eyes to every aspect of fashion, how to make shoes, how, I know how to sew and things like that. So that aspect of fashion I was aware of. But then you go into the green room where they create the flying Spider-Mans and things like that, and you see the technology behind it, and it just completely opens up to possibilities of what you could do
Oh,
with
wow.
that education. And everything that they do, they make sure that and I'm not paid by SCAD, but they make sure you know every aspect of the business so that whatever you chose to do, you would be prepared for it. So if
Right.
you have to know how to be a director, a producer, um, you have to know from architecture, they redid buildings all through Savannah. So how do you historically renovate a building to still maintain that historical status? Or in a situation, how can you think of a modern looking building that will complement the things? So those kinds of experiences, it's great to see the battlefields and things like that, but can I show you what are the possibilities of what your future could be
Oh,
because of this education? It changes your whole idea of what school
oh,
can mean.
absolutely. And I wish, unfortunately, field trips are like the first thing that get cut.
Mm,
And it's disappointing because there's so much out there that you just expose kids to, their own minds will go chasing and racing. So I think you have to find different, unique ways to, and I give a lot of credit to public school teachers who make those things happen and
yeah.
parents for exposing kids to different environments. Now, did your daughter attend the school?
She did. She
Oh, good.
graduated. She got a fashion internship in New York, 2 stints, and then she missed home. And so she moved back here. But it was just a great experience the whole time. And for me too, because I kept on visiting her quite often. But
Yeah.
I wanted to ask about when we're talking about parents just now, I wanted to ask, there are some parents out there that will understand the importance of it, but there is also parents that think, well, they'll learn that later. They're 9. They don't need to know that now. Why
Yeah.
is it important that we start early teaching our kids financial literacy and understanding the not being afraid of money? Like, for me and maybe you, I was always terrified of not having enough.
Oh, yeah.
And so I didn't have a love of money. I just was just
Well,
didn't understand
and
how to
and
make it
s- and
work.
it's funny, it's funny because I get this question framed sometimes where they ask me, why do you want to teach kids money's the most important thing? And that is not what I'm saying at all. But
Mm-mm.
if you think you can raise kids and not talk about money, you're just setting them up because the reality is money is a part of life and it's a resource that you need to know how to control or it will control you. I mean, you have to be able to make decisions and problem solve about money. Otherwise, you're just setting yourself up to be taken advantage of. And
Yeah.
I, unfortunately, I find a lot of families don't want to talk about money because of just personal shame, like shame about it's like money and politics and religion, like the things you're never supposed to talk about. But
Mm,
you have to, if you don't talk about it, the kids are going to learn off the street about all of those. So if you want your own values imparted, it's okay that you've made financial mistakes. I've had a lot of moms say, well, I took on more debt than I should have, or I still have credit card debt. I don't know that I want my kiddo to know that. And I'm like, I disagree. I think if you start early, it's one thing if you've never said anything and then suddenly at 18 you're trying to tell them everything. They're at a
Yeah.
point they're leaving. Your best access is when they are 7, 8, 9, 10, and in that mid-range of growing where they still turn to you and ask questions, and it's okay to answer those honestly, even if the answer is, I don't know, or
Yeah.
here's how this financial decision held me back, but I'm really glad I did this decision. Or now, as a family, we're putting our savings in a CD, and here's what a CD is. Like kids need to know that. So they also, because I often hear from kids, all you hear from parents is, we don't have any money. Like, don't ask for anything. We don't have it. You're not going to get it, or go earn it. You can earn it, and and that's okay, except they don't learn anything from that. They learn they don't have any money. Okay, well,
Hmm.
why? What is the reason? And some families, it's not because you're bad at money necessarily. There are lots of families who make different choices as far as what they want to have and what they don't want to live with. It's more important to have the freedom maybe than to have a big boat like the Joneses next door. So you have to share that with your kids so they also understand your perspective, because the tide really turns as time goes on, and your children are going to become, ideally,
Yes.
your guardian in the decades to
Yes.
come. And so
Yeah.
you want to have a shared value, even if they disagree with you, that they understand what's important to you is a critical piece to that. So you have to
Mhm.
have the conversation early. And none of my conversations include, okay, we're having this discussion about money right now because money's the most important thing in your life. You must earn 200,000 or you're not a
Mhm.
worthwhile human being. No one is
Right.
saying that. No one should say that.
That's right. Yeah, it is all about what your values are. I think one of the conversations that you can have early on is related to the credit card. I know my 5-year-old grandson, when he was 3, he like wanted to play video games at this arcade thing, and so to buy chips or whatever, we used our credit card, and so he's like, well, um, just give me your credit card. He thinks, I think he thought that the credit card just made money.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah. A
and
lot of people
so,
do.
yeah, even adults. But so having the discussion there, well, this money is put in, from our a set amount, and when it's gone, it's gone. It's not ever.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes that's where people, and I also there's some coaches that whenever we try to do our programs, we'll just say, well, just get 3 or 4 credit cards to pay for it.
Yeah.
And I just think, that's bad advice.
It is bad advice. It is bad advice. And I think that's someone who doesn't have your best interest at heart, and they're
Hmm.
really just moving themselves forward. And it's not okay. And I wanted to piggyback on what you were saying about your 5-year-old grandson and the credit card, because now we live in a world that is not only cashless. It used to be easy when, you could give kids $1 and like, here's your dollar for the ice cream. But we then moved to almost kind of like that credit card scenario. And now things are like Venmo, where it's not even something you physically hold. Like, this movement of money is happening in the
Hmm.
world. And kids, unless you explain in simple, direct terms, currency and how it does move through an economy, they are not going to have an appreciation for how much is $20 really,
Yeah.
and how do I, when they first get a job, like, how do I really manage that, $182 you take home?
Mhm.
And what do you do with that? And you have to start good habits early. And, why can't I just, use PayPal and Venmo and
Mhm.
all these other platforms that have different kinds of fees at times and are taking money in different ways. So I think, even if you don't want to talk about your personal experience, I think just talking to kids about how different businesses make money and
Yeah.
how what the exposure is to kids. Like, okay, look, they're going to be getting money from you one way or another. It's how they stay in business. So you get to decide who you want to do business with.
Yeah.
And, those questions, it comes back to that problem solving. You want kids to be able to independently look at a situation and say, is this in my best interest? So it's because the world is more complicated. You can't just give a kid $5 and think, okay, they're going to learn about coins
Yeah.
and
I love
dollars.
the whole exercise of teaching kids compound effect, understanding that early,
Yeah.
because when you talk about, well, you need to earn it. Well, how do I earn it? And is it tomorrow that I'll have it? So having them understand how you put this little bit away and how that little bit can be a lot if you are
Yeah.
patient, and that's the other thing. We're instant gratification. So
Oh, definitely. I do think that's where kids who come from a disadvantaged background, who don't have immediate access, have a bit of an advantage that even if their parents can offer them something, you do have to wait till a birthday, if you want a
yeah,
phone. You're not going to get an instant response versus we really are capable of doing that in, more affluent homes. And that doesn't help kids at all. You
no,
really need to know and understand the struggle and that it's worth even putting aside a small bit. You have to pay yourself first. I remember even when I got my first job, all I could afford was to put $25 a month in retirement.
yeah,
And that was a stretch for me, but I had to do it. And my financial lady at the time, God bless her, because she was like, Sharon, it's so much easier to add to your $25 over time, but you have to get in the habit of putting something away right now.
yeah,
And so, that was such good advice. And I took that to heart. But we don't share that enough with young people, and that there's other ways to earn money. That's one of the hard parts that kids from a low income environment often don't recognize how to make money work for them, that they
yeah.
have passive opportunities to really take advantage of, and you don't have to slave away for every dollar. And yet their families often are working 2 jobs, 3 jobs to slave away to put food on the table. And I respect that immensely. I have done that myself at times, but the idea, if you can get your thinking to transition to, I'm doing this in the short term to save enough money so that I can now make that money work for me. And the easiest, I mean, not the easiest example, but one example is young people are like, well, I do want a home. And I'm like, get a duplex. If you can live in one half of a duplex
And
and
rent the
rent out
other.
the other half, that'll cover your mortgage payment and give you a little pocket money. And you're paying off a duplex in the meanwhile, which eventually you can move out of and just use for a rental income. But
Yeah.
kids aren't inherently taught that, and families don't necessarily think like that. My husband's had to remind me many a time, Sharon, your obsessive need to think and talk about money with everyone we meet is not the norm. And so
Mm.
I said, okay, I understand that, but it does make a difference. So you've got to try to educate and reach out and teach that to young people.
One of my businesses is an anti-aging and wellness business. And when I first got into it, I thought, this is ideal for college kids. Why should you slang burgers, smell like, grease, and be overtired because and all of the things, when you could just do this as an online or in person and have that passive income? And it just seems like such a no-brainer. It's like kids,
Oh, I'm
college
so glad. I
kids.
hope some have listened to you
Yeah.
because, it's not fun to smell like grease on a Friday night.
No, that's right. But it just the amount of time you could in 4 hours make more than you made in 2 weeks. It's
Wow.
just like crazy. But anyway, time has flown by. I just enjoyed this so much. But it is time now for me to share your contact information for all
Oh,
those out there that are saying, "Oh my God, I have to talk with Sharon. I have to find more about her book." So the website for those of you that are just listening, I hope you have had your paper and pencil or pen out the whole time getting all these notes. But if not, um, this information will be on my YouTube channel, which is Vicki Noethling. So please subscribe, as well as my findyourleadershipconfidence.com. But if you're watching, you get to get a screenshot right now. The website is SharonSoliday.com. Again, SharonSoliday.com. On Facebook, it is her name, Sharon.Soliday.Roland.author, AUTHOR, author.speaker. And then Instagram is her name, Sharon.Soliday, and LinkedIn, again, her name, Sharon-Soliday-Roland, and dash a bunch of numbers that we don't remember. You, again, can just search on LinkedIn for Sharon Soliday-Roland, and you will find her. And I'm going to turn it over to Sharon to talk to you about what you can find when you go to the website, some links or resources she has there, information about her book, as well as where she spends the most time in social media so that you can DM her with any questions. So Sharon, it's all yours.
Thank you, Vicki, so much. I appreciate the opportunity. My website I just want to make your listeners aware that I have the book I wrote, Cradle to Credit, is Money Lessons Birth to 18. And every chapter is the year, and it starts at birth and what you should be teaching kids, and more importantly, how to teach it, how to talk to a 9-year-old about a credit report. So it hopefully breaks down for families and for kids that read it, pretty digestible information. I attached a free download of chapter related to 15-year-olds, because I get a lot of questions about, well, what about driving and cars and insurance? And, how do I explain that to kids? So I have a whole chapter on that, including different kinds of insurance and what that relates to. And I put that in my journal area. It's a blog. Perfect. And it's a free download on 15-year-olds. So feel free to just print the whole thing away or, download it to your device. So I'm happy to share that. If you have it also gives you an idea of how the book's laid out, so you can decide whether or not it's a right fit for you. You can definitely reach me through the website. I have lots of contact. I have a contact page, and I have people contact me for all sorts of things. I do not do coaching. So because I sold my company and I'm in this happily ever after phase, I'm enjoying that a great deal, but I'm always happy to just have a conversation. If someone is curious, or a young person is like, how do I become X? I definitely can be another adult authority you can reach out to and ask that question of. And then I'm on LinkedIn a lot. So if you want to message me through LinkedIn or through Facebook, those are the best ways. So that's how to engage with me. And I'm looking forward to hearing from you. If you've got any questions or suggestions, please let me know.
Fantastic. Well, Sharon, it's been just such a pleasure chatting with you. I know that you shared a lot of wonderful information, stories, and hopefully someone out there has gained a little bit more knowledge or courage to talk to their kids about that subject of money, and understanding that there are lots of ways to be financially sound and be, creative in what you do to get there.
Thank you, Vicki. I really appreciate it. And thank you again for the work you're doing in your volunteer sphere. And it makes such a huge difference. So 3 cheers from both of us for public school teachers and doing great things. And thanks to all your listeners.
Fantastic. All right. As I always do, and remind you that life is a journey, and it's up to you to enjoy the ride. This is Vicki Noethling signing off.
Thank you for tuning into the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling, where we share impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Remember to visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast.